I will show you how to install and use the firewall and antivirus on Linux with the example of the long-term support version of Ubuntu 18.04. Most of the information will also be valid for other Debian-based distributions. In this mini tutorial I will show you how to install and activate the firewall. As an antivirus we will install ClamAV, Clam Antivirus. Then we will download a test virus so that I can show you what the antivirus does and what it does not do. I will show you the graphical and the command line scanner. I will show you how to get a right-click scan menu for the file manager. And finally, how to create a little script for a complete system scan. Because if you use only the basic command line options, then ClamAV brings a lot of unnecessary error messages. So we will need additional parameters which we can put into a script. And finally, I show you a way how to get a second opinion if ClamAV should report a file as infected, because Clam Antivirus is a little bit notorious for bringing false positives. And that you can do easily with the help of a web page, which even has multiple scan engines. So before we get started, a little overview over the packages and the package names. First, for the firewall, there's a package called UFW, Uncomplicated Firewall, but UFW of itself is only a command line tool, but there's a graphical front end for it. And for the antivirus, there's a package called ClamAV, which contains the programs ClamScan, which is the command line scanner, and FreshClam, which is the updater for the antivirus database. And also there's a graphical front end available called ClamTK. Now, because the installers are automatically satisfying the dependencies, all we need to install in the end is the graphical front ends, which is GUFW and ClamTK. So let's get started. I show you both ways how to install it, with the graphical software manager and also with the command line. You can either search directly for GUFW, which immediately brings up the right firewall, or you can just search for firewall, which brings up a lot of options, and you have to scroll down to find the right one, which is this here. Now there's another firewall available here, but this one is more complicated. So we choose GUFW and just click on install. Now alternatively, we could have installed it from the command line using sudo apt install GUFW, but we have it already installed graphically, so we can launch it from here. And here all we have to do is switch it on. This will take 2-3 seconds and then it's active. Now for most home systems this should be enough. So this will just block all the incoming connections from the outside. Now if you need exceptions, for example if you use your computer as a server, you can define them here under rules. You click the plus icon. For example you use SSH and you can add the exceptions here. But for normal home system such as this one here, I don't use the exceptions, and so I remove them again. That was the firewall. For the antivirus, you search for ClamTK and you can install it here if you want, or alternatively we can install it from the command line, which I will do right now. Okay, the installation is finished. Now on non-Debian systems, it might be that you have to do the FreshClam database update manually using sudo FreshClam. But on Debian systems, normally FreshClam is already running in the background, and it tells us because the FreshClam log file is already logged. Now we can actually use this information to look into the log file using the tail command, which shows us the end of the log file, and with the -f option it can follow the log file progress. So as the parameter I just copy down the path and the name of the log file, and it will show us what it's doing. Okay, we know that FreshClam is finished with an update cycle when it prints out this dashed line. So I exit the tail command with Ctrl+C, and we'll go to the configuration of ClamTK. So let's launch ClamTK. Now in this Ubuntu version of ClamTK we have 5.25. When you start it the first time, it requires double-click activation of these buttons here. So the first time when we go to settings we have to double click, and the first time that I always deactivate is the double click action. Newer versions already default to single click. Here in the settings menu you can check all these check marks except the double click. Let's go through the options. PUAs are potentially unwanted applications, but I have to tell you that it is a little bit prone to bring false alarms. So it is debatable whether you should activate it or deactivate it. You can try it first with the option, but if it brings too many alarms, then deactivate it. Now the other options: scan files beginning with a dot. This scans all the hidden files. Scan files larger than 20 megabytes. Scan directories recursively. This is very important because this will scan subdirectories. And check for updates to this program. Okay. Now for testing the antivirus, we're going to download the so-called ICA test virus. ICA stands for European Institute for Computing and Antivirus Research, I think. It is actually only a text file which counts as a virus and should be detected by most antivirus engines. It can be either downloaded directly from the ICA page, or you can even create it yourself by going to the Wikipedia article and copy and paste the virus. So we're searching for ICA test virus. Here I can look at the Wikipedia article. Now this is the German version, but there's an English version also. This here is the string. So you can go to a text editor if you want. You can just copy the text and paste it into the editor and save it. For example, I put it into downloads because I want to download other versions of the virus, and I'll save it under ica.txt. Alternatively, we can look at the ICA page, ica.org, and here we will find different versions of the virus. ica.com, ica.com text, which is the same file just with different extension. Here we have the file in a zip file, and ica.com2.zip is the virus twice zipped. It is the virus in a zip file inside another zip file. So I will download this one here. ClamScan actually should be capable to detect a virus inside a zip file. Okay, here we have our two viruses. The other file I have downloaded previously because I had installed Google Chrome, but that's not part of this tutorial. Now let's have a look at how to use the scanner. With ClamTK you can scan a file or a directory. Let's do that. We select downloads, press OK, and it will scan the directory. Here we have the results. We can make the window a little bit bigger. It has detected the double zipped file and also our text file that we created from Wikipedia. Now you have to know that ClamEV does not automatically delete files, which is sometimes good because if it has a false positive, it's better it does not delete the file. So here we have to take action ourselves. We can either delete the file or put it into quarantine. In the ClamTK graphical user interface you can access the quarantine folder here, and we can also restore them back to where we deleted them from. I want to restore them because I want to do further tests. The basic options for ClamScan are the following: -I, which will only print out the infected files, and -R, which will scan directories recursively, which means scan all the subdirectories, then followed by the directory or file that you want to scan. In this case, I'm already in downloads. I will just scan the actual folder, which is represented by the dot. So ClamScan is finished. This is how the output of ClamScan looks. It will print out every infected file that it finds, and a summary. Number of infected files is 2, number of scanned files, and so on. Again, we would have to take action ourselves. We would have to delete the files manually. What I want to cover next is, it would be convenient sometimes to have a right-click scan menu. If you could just right-click here and have a scan option. I will show you how you can get that with a couple of file managers. I have installed a couple of additional file managers. Here we have Nautilus, also known as Files, which is the default file manager of GNOME. Then we have Nemo, which comes typically with the Cinnamon desktop. Then we have Thuna from XFCE. And finally, Caja from the Mate desktop. First of all, this here is Nemo. And it turns out Nemo seems to be the smartest of the file managers, because we already have a right-click scan menu, scan for threads, which already starts clamtk. I have done nothing else. All that was required was to install Nemo and clamtk. For Nautilus, the default GNOME file manager, we go to the command line. And there's a package, clamtk-gnome. Now we should have a right-click scan menu for Nautilus. If it does not show up immediately, you have to log out and log in, then it will show up. So after logging in again, we have a right-click scan menu. Next one is Thuna. For Thuna, there's an option to add a custom action. Here in the edit menu, configure custom actions. We click the plus icon and call it scan for threads to be consistent with the other examples. I add some description. As a command, we type clamtk %f, which is documented here, the path of the first selected file. I think multi-selection does not work, but this seems to be a restriction of clamtk itself, so I always just use %f. We can add an icon. Let's switch here to all icons. Let's search for clamtk. Here we have it. Also, we have to click on the next tab and select the contexts in which the right-click scan menu appears. Then close it, and now we should have our right-click scan. Here it is, and it also works. Next we take a look at Caja, and here I don't know any official way to add it. There's probably some way to expand the file manager, but that might be complicated. So when I use this file manager, I use a simple trick. I associate directories with clamtk so that later it offers me the virus scanner here in this menu. But we have to be a little careful with this, because associating file types with clamtk should not replace the default action. The default action here would be to open the directory. When we double click, the same thing happens. It goes into the directory. We don't want to replace that. Now, normally the file managers should be smart enough to not replace the double click action for open, but you never know. I actually had once a problem under KDE when I used the Dolphin file manager, where this kind of trick basically worked, but then I had a side effect when I clicked on the Dropbox menu in the system tray. It opened the clam scanner. Anyway, let's try this. Open with other application. Here we already have clamtk, and just to make sure that it doesn't use it as a default, I I click this away, although actually we want it to remember, but I know from experience clicking it away also works, and it's probably safer. Now, of course, immediately it starts to scan, but what will be more interesting is what it does the next time. Let's try again. Now we have ClampDK here as an option, and it also works. So this is the most closest thing to a right-click scan menu. But be a little bit careful. If you're not sure whether you would have any side effects, then either don't do it, because it's just optional. You could still use the ClampDK application, or try it out in a virtual machine first. And the default action to open the directory or by double click still works. Okay, next, doing a full system scan. First I will show you something. If you do a clamp scan of the whole system drive, you will get a lot of error messages and warnings like this here. The reason for this is that there's certain system directories which are not, let's say, real files. I mean, they are kind of files because Linux treats a lot of things as files, but they are not necessarily files on the hard disk. For example, dev contains objects which are actually hardware. The objects in the proc folder represent running processes. So these are actually, I think, kernel objects that are represented as files only here. And also there's the sys directory, which contains other system objects. And it's mainly the sys folder, which brings these kind of errors. So in order to avoid these kind of error messages, we can do the following. So we create a directory called bin under the home folder, and you have to spell it like this in lowercase. This bin folder will then be included in the search path. Let's make a short check first. The home bin folder is not yet included here. Now after logging out and logging in again, let's check again, and here we have bin included. So let's write a short script file. Start with sudo, because we want to scan system directories as the root user, otherwise it wouldn't be able to read some of the files. And clamp scan -i-r, and then we use the additional option -- exclude dir equals, and then caret symbol, and then the path. We exclude the device directory, then exclude dir the process directory, the sys directory. And then we have to tell it which directory to scan, and we want it to scan the root of the file system. That's basically it. And the caret symbols are required because this counts then as a so-called regular expression. We save it under bin, and I will call it scansys without an extension. Let's close it. Now we still have to make sure that the script is executable. So we go to properties, to permissions, and check the executable checkmark here. Now we can just call the command from the terminal. It will scan the whole system. So the test run for our newly created script has finished. It has finished without the errors that you've seen before, the read page errors. I recommend you, once you have the script, make a backup of the script file onto a USB drive or on some cloud drive, so that you will have it the next time you install a Linux. What if ClampScan reports a file as infected? Because chances are that it's not really a virus. And there's this website called virustotal.com where you can get it cross-checked. It actually has more than 60 antivirus engines, so you will have not just a second opinion, but many opinions. Additionally, it also can check URLs. But be careful with uploading document files, because this site works together with antivirus companies, and they will probably get the uploaded files as samples for further analysis, and you don't want document files with private information uploaded there. So this is how it looks like. Here I normally use just drag and drop to upload a file. Let's take this one here. And here you get the scan result from about 60 different engines. 52 out of 61 reported this as a virus. Now if ClamAV is the only one that identifies a file as a virus, then most probably it's just a false positive. Now this site here cannot replace a proper antivirus on the system because you cannot do a complete system check here. I also already mentioned you should not upload documents, and also there's a limit in the upload size, which is somewhere between 100 and 200 megabytes. A file that you upload there cannot be larger than that. Now a short summary, because I talked a lot and it looked maybe complicated and like a lot of work, but it actually isn't. If you install your second or your fifth or your 10th Linux, it isn't really much work to do. You can do the installation of the firewall and of the antivirus in one command, then switch on the firewall, check the settings of ClamTK, and you're almost finished. Additionally, you can put a script file into your bin folder, and the right-click scan menu is optional. Thanks for watching.